The international media is stunningly biased against China. Data from a multi-year study has confirmed. Out of 133 lengthy analyses of China in the Financial Times Big Read column, over a 4-year period, only 2 articles presented China positively. That's what researchers discovered. Separate studies of The Guardian and the BBC showed that 90% of stories were negatively framed. Between January and July 2021, there were 576 reports on China in the UK Telegraph, of which only 2.5% took a positive stance. In general, news media almost never published a positive report about the country, said the analysis of reports in The Telegraph, The Guardian, the BBC, the Financial Times and The Economist. The result was that the public received a wrongful image of the country, said the report by Dr. Tim Summers, who led the research project, which involved Hong Kong and UK academic institutions. The British media texts research for this paper contain almost no positive coverage of China, Dr. Summers says. This will not come as a surprise to many readers. The bias of Western mainstream media's coverage of China is widely known, but Dr. Summers' team at Hong Kong's Chinese University and London's Loud China Institute enables us to take a data-based look at the problem. And what did they discover? Well, bias was not the only problem. The study revealed that Western journalists tended to politicize all their coverage of China, even when the topic being covered was not politics. A political and normative lens is often brought to coverage of social, economic and cultural issues, researchers said. Reporters put everything through their hostile Western lens to reinforce a monochrome, reductionist and negative picture of the country and its politics, Dr. Summers said. The Economist covers China with a weekly column called Chagwan, written by David Rennie, which constantly recycles the same words over and over to paint whatever China does as bullying and threatening and so on. There's not the slightest attempt at fairness. Analysis showed his columns were mostly clearly negative, with a small number being mixed and not a single one classified as positive. The research showed that 2 locations, Hong Kong and Xinjiang, were thrown into articles almost randomly as keywords for repression. They are frequently mentioned in passing in reports on topics that are not related to either place, in a way that frames China negatively, a template to plug into any story that needs evidence for Chinese repression, even if that story does not relate either to Hong Kong or Xinjiang. Now, interestingly, some reporters knew they were doing harm. The report quotes John Sudworth, the BBC correspondent notorious for his hostile attitude to China and associated with the now debunked Uyghur genocide narrative. Sudworth admitted that he focused only on the negative and knew that doing that was problematic. He said, obviously there is a danger that becomes shorthand, not just for the Chinese government and the Chinese system, but for the sort of place China is and for its people in general. And I can really see the danger in this. It's fascinating that he knew how harmful this was, but it never stopped him and his BBC colleagues giving the world a totally misleading image of China, which the BBC continues to do on a daily basis. Now, I know what China correspondents say. They say, we don't hate the Chinese, we only hate the Chinese government. Well, analysis of their writing shows that is not true. Now, the negative narrative is so solid in Western media that other views cannot be put forward, said Professor Daniel Bell, who is also quoted in the study. There is almost universal consensus in the West that China is led by an evil government that is bad to its own people and dangerous to people in other countries. It's extremely difficult to publish views that argue otherwise. How to get the truth out? You can't. The Western media is so united on this narrative that they've turned public opinion in Western countries against China. Professor Bell added, public opinion makes it almost impossible to publish comments that offer a balanced picture of Chinese politics in leading Western media outlets. Now, Dr. Summers ends his report with a recommendation to achieve a more accurate and comprehensive understanding of China. alternative sources of information should be actively explored, and those with different opinions encouraged to contribute to the debate. Which is what I've been saying all along, right? Ditch the Western media. Instead, read widely, find other sources. You could start here. Peace.